Greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 146, a very special episode that we've got going on today. I'm your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, we are joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there. That is one Mr. Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. So many nights I'd sit by my window, waiting for someone to sing me his song. So many dreams I kept deep inside me, alone in the dark. But now you've come along and you light up my life. You give me hope to carry on.
Is that a little Barry Manilow, Rick?
No, Bob, that's
No.
a Debbie Boone.
Oh, was it Debbie Boone?
Debbie Boone, 1977. You
Oh
know
my
why you may
God.
not remember her? She was a one-hit wonder, Bob.
Was she? Debbie Boone. I'll be
Yeah.
darned.
One-hit wonder. Now she may have made some charts, on the Christian
Mm-hmm.
list and
Yeah.
things like that. But as far as like the overall American list, yeah, she's pretty much a one-hit wonder.
Nothing wrong with that, Rick. I love one-hit wonders. Yesterday I was driving with my wife over to Jupiter, Florida to visit her aunt and uncle and to pick up some tools that he was gifting me. And there was a song that came on the radio that was, I think, another one-hit wonder from the 1970s, Paul Davis, I Go Crazy. Do you remember that one?
No, maybe perhaps you could remind me how it goes.
I probably can't now. But yesterday, now you put me on the spot. I can't. But yesterday, oh, I remembered every single word of
Oh
that
yeah.
song, and I was like belting it out in the car as I was driving. Right.
Uh-huh.
My wife was like, "Why do you remember this song?" And I'm like, "I remember like riding in like the way back." Because I had 5 older brothers and sisters. I was in
Uh-huh.
the way back of the Oldsmobile station wagon, like
Uh-huh.
driving up.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
2.5 hours,
Now, were
three
you
hours.
on the in that section where they flip
Yeah.
the thing where you can actually sit on the bench and you're facing the inside of the car?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yes.
Bob, I did the same exact thing because I had four
All
older
right.
brothers and
Well,
sisters.
yeah. All right. Well,
I
So,
do know.
and I
Yeah.
remember hearing that song, and there were 2 songs from like the 70s that I remember distinctly.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Driving in the Oldsmobile with my family going camping, driving up to Vermont where the extended family lived. And Paul Davis, I Go Crazy, one of them. And the other one was
I
Seasons in the
go
Sun.
crazy. I'm
That's
sorry,
it.
what was the
Yeah.
second one?
Seasons in the Sun. Do you remember
Oh,
that one?
we had Seasons in the Sun.
Right.
We
Both of
had
them were just real tear jerker
we had
songs.
seasons in the sun. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was like, what's that song about? Oh, it's about a guy dying. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think that's what the song was actually about. But
Uh-huh.
that's what like the, urban legend, that's what the song was
Right, right,
about.
right. Well, if you love one hit wonders, Bob, you're going to love today's episode because we are doing a top 10 list of Captain American villains, one and dones. So these are villains that, Cap fought and then we never heard from him again.
Never.
Never heard from him again.
Yeah.
And so I thought this was a fun idea. And we put it out there to the Facebook group. And we got a ton of ideas, tons of thoughts. And these were characters that like, oh, I didn't even think of those.
Right. Yeah.
So we had like 40 different comments of
Yeah.
suggestions on so I think we're gonna have a lot of fun today.
I know, but it wasn't as easy as the task appeared. When we started, we came up with it and said, let's do this and put it on the Facebook group. And there were lots of great suggestions, but then it remained to us to run down the data on some of these. And some of them were like, oh crap, he appeared somewhere else. So like one of them was, I remember Armless Tiger Man.
Yes.
Right. Now, we knew that Armless Tiger Man originated in the Golden Age, and we did make a little caveat that said, well, we will allow for a character that originated in the Golden Age, but was only used once post, Silver Age and beyond. And so we thought, Armos Targaman, that's a great one, right? Because he
Mhm.
was in Flags of Our Fathers that
Right. Yeah. The miniseries with Black Panther. Yeah.
yeah. And I thought, perfect. And then he shows up in like an indestructible Hercules miniseries.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So I was dang. So
Yeah.
so it took a lot of research for us to figure out, like, are these folks actually one-hit wonders?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was a resource that I found that was really, really helpful. And it's the complete Marvel reading order. And the website is CMRO dot Travis, TRAVIS dash Starnes, STARNES.com. So CMRO, which stands for Complete Marvel Reading Order. And then I guess Travis Starnes is the guy who probably did all the hard work and
The
put all
guy
this
who's
together.
devoted his entire life to
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really cool because you could pick a character and then you could see every single issue that they've been in the reading order that they were published. So
How can this be possible?
I know. And so
Is there
there were
like a sweatshop in Bangladesh where he's got like hundreds of people on the job doing this?
I don't know. Maybe we need to have him a guest on the
I
show.
guess.
All right,
Yeah.
Travis, if you're out there, reach out to me
Is he the
on
Watcher?
Facebook. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. So yeah, Travis, you're out there, reach out to me. You could send me an email at capcomicfans@gmail.com or just hit me up on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll try to get you on the show and talk to us about it. This is an amazing database because it's broken down by major characters, minor characters, and then most of these that we're going to go over today fell underneath obscure characters. And you're right, we had to go in and there was, like take for example, another one is number one, right? The
Yep.
main villain that was
Yeah.
in that Steve Englehart run that, people say was Richard Nixon, right? But he
Right.
was a high ranking government official who,
Mhm.
committed suicide at the end. And you're like, oh, well, there you go. Like here he is in Cap. And then here he is, he dies at the end. So that's a one and done. No, he actually appeared previously to Captain America in I want to. I don't have time to look it up right now, but it was like
Yeah.
Amazing Adventures or something like that, and it was a significant story that led into the Captain America story. But so we
Yeah.
did some research, and I listen. I know Bob gets a lot of flack for just showing up because out of 140 some episodes, he's probably done that 130 some. But today he put a lot of research into these characters.
That's, Rick, that's how I like to me, I'm a bookworm. I like to dig into the books, right?
Uh-huh.
And of course, when I sent, Rick some background information, the first thing he did was complain that it was too much.
That's right.
So,
I'm
you
like,
can't win for losing on this show, folks.
I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. All right.
Word, punctuation, word.
Where's the more pictures? Where are the pictures?
I did put pictures for each character for you.
You did a picture of each character. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was very nice of you. But I read comics, Bob. I'm not an intellectual like you. But I did a little fun stuff too, Bob. So
right.
I am going to weave in
Ooh.
a one-hit wonder song in between each one of these. We're going to count them down. This was actually VH1's top 10 one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
I don't know what they based it on, but
VH1.
it was
it's the MTV for the thinking crowd.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So this was, I think it was based on the fact that, these were American ranked songs. Now, don't you go looking them up because I'm going to quiz you as we go through.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So what and I just, by the way, You Light Up My Life. That was number 11.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to go as we go through 10 to 1 in our rankings. I'm going to do the 10 to 1 top one-hit wonder songs.
All right. Awesome.
Now, if that's not a reason to stick around.
It is. Yeah.
We're at the very end. We're going to do what we did before when we did our top 10 villains not named the Red Skull, which is all the way back in episode 9. We're going to do dishonorable mentions.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe the ones that you had suggested on the Facebook group, maybe they did make it into the dishonorable mentions. So stick around for that. And if that's not a reason to stick around, Bob, we are going to announce next episode's guest. And it's a doozy, Bob. This is a big one that we're going to have next episode. So stick around for the end of that, and we will let you know.
All right. Well, that you are truly a marketing guy because you sold me. I'm going to stick around.
Are you? That's good.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Bob, if we were talking about marketing, if you were a patron of the show, you would actually already know who the guest was because we reached out to you to let you know first and to see if you wanted to submit a question for our guest. How do you become a patron, you do ask? Well, go to CaptainAmericaComicBookFans.com and you will see an area where it says perks for being a patron or something like that. Just click on that and you can sign up. And if you go to the Shield Slinger or higher level super soldier, you will get a few different perks. One of them being our challenge coin, which by the way, we're running out. So make sure you sign up for that soon, as well as some other cool things, including knowing who our guests are first and submitting a question. How's that for marketing, Bob?
That was a good job.
Yeah.
Good job. You should pursue a career in this field.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, Bob. We got anything to go over before we get into this top 10 list? Anything fun or exciting happening in your life that you want to?
No, I told you that I traveled over to pick up all these tools.
Oh yeah, this was your uncle.
Yeah, so
right?
it's my aunt, my wife's aunt.
Okay.
Was married about 8 years ago. We actually introduced him, and he moved out here, moved in with her here in Florida, and he took up woodworking as a hobby in his life. In fact, he because he wanted to build a sailboat, and he built a sailboat.
Right. We had this conversation. I said I would not get in any sailboat that any family member of mine made.
Yes. So I went over because he said, hey, he's like mid-80s. And he's like, I gotta get rid of these things. Would you like them? And I said, yeah, I want them.
And then he said you had to rent a car, right? Did you rent
he did say you need something. So I said, oh, he sent me some dimensions of stuff. And I rented a big old pickup truck and drove over there, and it wasn't nearly big enough. And he, I could tell he was a little steamed at me because he just bought a Porsche and he wants to put it in his garage and all the workbench and the tools. So he takes me into the garage, and I got to be honest with you, Rick. I did not take wood shop in high school. I took electronics, and so I know a drill and a circular saw and a jigsaw, and that's pretty much it. A Dremel. I can identify those 4 tools. So he takes me in there and he's like, okay, what do you want? And these things might have been in Arnim Zola's laboratory for all I knew. Right. I mean, I couldn't even identify what they were. I was like, the green one. I think I could use one of the green ones. And,
I don't have that one.
I don't have a red one. I'd like a red one. And so I said, hey, maybe you could just, if you were getting started and you wanted like a base woodworking workshop, which of these would be best to have? And so he sort of helped me identify things, and I was able to fit a lot, and brought them all home last night and unpacked them and put them in the garage. But I have to go back again to get the remaining stuff. So this is probably the last time you'll see me with 10 fingers. I'm showing them now. Probably the last time that you'll see me with all 10. So
I do see that you're wearing your Captain America ring.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, twin?
Yeah, all right.
Hey, I got
the twins activate.
Form of a bucket of water.
Form of a podcast co-host. Yeah.
Click, 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 click.
Yeah. So that was my excitement this weekend.
That's cool.
How about you, man? Doing anything cool?
Well, I came back. I took the family on our big vacation for the year, and normally we just kind of go to the beach. But
Yeah.
my sister lives in Spain, and she's been after us for a long time to come out there. And with my son just graduating college, I was like, if I don't do it now, I don't know
Right.
when we're going to do this. So
Yeah.
it was not cheap, but we went out there for 10 days. Take probably a couple of those away for travel,
Right. Yeah.
but we had a nice trip. It was a nice trip. So yeah, it was a really good time. We kind of broke it up. With first half was like a beach vacation where it was we had a place that it was like an apartment with a deck that we could actually see the ocean from our deck and hear it at night, which was really nice. Beautiful boardwalk. Probably not as much of a Spanish cultural thing because it was more of like a resort area, but it seemed like we were the only Americans there. Like we ran into one other American couple over the course of 4 days. So it seemed like that's where a lot of the Spanish and some Europeans went to vacation. So that was kind of cool. Very relaxing, very nice. And it was a topless as well. Yeah. So
Nice.
you got a little bit of that going.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Did you go
mostly
topless?
I did once or
Yeah.
twice. Yes.
Okay.
When in Rome.
Yeah.
So, but I will say most of those people going topless were probably like our age or more.
Yeah. It's never as good as it is in the advertising.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so then we kind of reversed it, right? We went back to Valencia to get the high-speed train to go back to Madrid, and then that's when we saw my sister and her boyfriend, and we had an apartment there that was like downtown, very close to the underground, as far as the subway system they have, which is very clean, very nice. It's a really clean city, very nice people. And we did a lot of walking. And my sister and her boyfriend were wonderful hosts. They had all these things planned out for us, like, this day we're going to do this day we're going to do that. So that was very helpful. And, he'd lived there his entire life. She had been there, 12 years. So they had a lot of good things to,
Insights,
customs,
yeah.
And it was nice to, people who spoke English too, because my Spanglish, gets us by
Si,
so
senor.
much.
Yeah.
you
Right. That's it.
Donde está el baño? So we did that. And then we did so much walking. This was the first vacation, Bob, I ever went on. I actually lost weight.
Wow.
I was only half a pound,
Yeah.
but normally when I go on vacation, I gain 3 to 5 pounds.
Right.
And this one, guess how many miles over the course of our entire trip? Guess how many miles we had walked?
73.
Close, 60.
60. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is.
Yeah. It's like an ultra marathon or something.
Something like that. I don't
Yeah.
know. Whatever those, healthy people do.
Yeah.
But yeah. But anyway.
Wow. And you met Steve Rogers while you were there.
I did posted that in the Facebook group. Yeah, there was a life-size version of Steve Rogers in one of their collectible shops, I was just like, what? Like, of
Yeah.
all the superhero characters they could put in there, they put Captain America, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I'm really glad I went. We had a lot of good time with family and seeing my sister. And like I said, I'm more of a beach person, so I'm not much of a sightseeing person. It was cool seeing the cathedrals. It was cool seeing the castles. It was cool, seeing the various sites and things like that. But the first half felt kind of like relaxing, like a vacation. And the second half felt more like a class trip.
Right. Right.
It's we're not relaxing, but it beats going to school.
Yeah.
Right, so
yeah.
But anyway, and I know my wife and my kids, they love sightseeing, so they really enjoyed it. So that was the important part.
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome, man. That sounds like you had a lot of fun, and you'll be looking back on this for years and years and talking about it. So,
Si, senor.
Yeah.
All right, Bob. I am excited about this top 10 list. Do you want to get to it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So the parameters we kind of talked about, it is a villain or an antagonist.
Ooh, I like that word.
Right.
Yeah.
That has been in the Captain America books, that fought Captain America and then never seen or heard from again. Uh, other than that, it was pretty wide open, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're looking at all kinds of decades here, right? We're looking at the 40s, the 50s, all the way up to recent times. So we have a little bit of everything in this top 10 list. And Bob, do you want to start?
I would, Rick, but you might find this interesting because I know you love history. But did you
Okay.
know a fun fact for you, Rick?
Uh-huh.
Did you know the origin of the word villain?
No, I did not.
Well, it's a medieval word actually from medieval England, and
Hmm.
it was back then in the medieval period they had serfs, right? And serfs were tied to the land of the manor,
Hmm.
the lord of the manor, right? And so they couldn't leave the land, and so a villain was the lowest rung of the let's just say the indentured class. So
Hmm.
they were sworn loyal to the lord of the manor, and they could not leave their property. And so they were given a small a small piece of land which they had to farm, and they had to pay a certain amount of their crops to the lord of the manor every year. But they weren't like free to just leave and go find some other place to live if they could find a better deal at a different a different lord's manor. So a villain was sort of like the person everybody looked down upon as being the sort of the low life, you know, almost close to a slave in terms of their social class. So interestingly, that's the word we use for bad guys.
Wow. I did
Yeah.
not know that. How did you find that out, Bob?
Well, I've been reading a lot of histories of medieval history, and
Hmm.
so one in particular I was reading covered what it was like to live in that era, and
Hmm.
explaining the different social classes and stuff. So I know I found that was interesting that we sort of borrowed that word and have transformed it into the bad guy, the antagonist, as you point out.
Hmm.
So
It is interesting.
yeah,
I Yeah, what did we call them before in that top 10 list? It was yeah, that's right. There was a difference between villains and bad guys,
yeah, right,
right?
yeah, right,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
All right. So, Rick, coming in at number 10, the bottom of the
Numero
list.
Diaz.
Just bear with us, folks. We got to get this out of his system. All right. Is Eric Cameron, otherwise known as Adonis. You remember Adonis, Rick? Probably,
Wait a
probably
minute, Bob.
not.
Was that your nickname in high school?
Right. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they called me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So Eric Cameron appeared in one issue only, Rick, and that was Captain America 243 with a cover date of March 1980. So if you do not remember, because you
Wait a minute.
probably
That
don't,
was that was pre Roger Stern, John Byrne.
this was a Roger McKenzie, Rich Butler
Ah, yes,
issues.
yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it was a one shot wonder, one issue story featuring a guy by the name of Eric Cameron, who was the president and CEO of an electronics company. And somehow he managed to pilfer the Shield Master Matrix that Shield uses to build their life model decoys. And his
Hmm.
goal was, he was kind of a shrimpy little guy, and he was getting older, and he wanted to sort of turn himself into the perfect man, right? He would
Hmm.
be healthy and physically robust, and he would live for years and years and years being able to run his company. But his son had different ideas. Rick, and he sabotaged the master matrix. And so when his father got into it, it actually short circuited and overloaded.
Oh no.
And yeah, and it turned him into this sort of, Quasimodo looking creature that was physically deformed. But more than that, it also sort of mentally unbalanced him and turned him into an insanely paranoid and murderous dude. So
Hmm.
when this happens, of course, Cap is looking for this master matrix, and he's at Cameron Electronics when this incident happens. But somehow Adonis gets away before Cap can get him, and he runs and he heads out and hides out in a swamp, and he decides that he is going to go back into the city, and he's going to cause a lot of turmoil and basically conduct a war on beauty. And so he's got
Oh.
a great quote where he says, "All you know is beauty. You build statues to beauty. You put beauty on a pedestal. You worship beauty, but beauty is false. There is no beauty, not for me." So that's a that's Adonis for you, right? So he goes in, and it's a really sort of anticlimactic battle with
Mhm.
Cap. It takes place, at this park, and there's some construction equipment, and somehow in the process of this, poor Adonis gets snagged on a bulldozer, and there's little levers that turn it on and off and all
Yeah.
that, and he
Mhm.
pulls on the lever, and unfortunately it drives into the lake and it short circuits Adonis and basically electrocutes him. And that's the end of poor Adonis.
Aw.
Yeah. So there you have it.
Now,
One shot.
why did he make your top 10 list, Bob?
Well, because one, it's hard to find a lot of characters that only appeared once, Rick, and I just felt bad for this guy. The name Adonis, of course, comes from the Greek pantheon of gods, and
Uh-huh.
and Adonis was, the god of beauty and desire, at least the male one, Aphrodite being the opposite. And so there was actually a great story in Greek mythology where basically Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Persephone fight over Adonis. And Aphrodite cheats to win this contest to see which one he will pick. And Persephone gets mad and goes and complains to Zeus. And poor Adonis, gets a boar sicked on him, and it gores him. And of course, he ends up down in hell, which coincidentally, that's where Persephone lives as the goddess of the underworld. And so he ends up having to spend most of his year down there with her, and then he gets to come back up and spend a little time with Aphrodite. So there's this Greek mythological basis for this character of Adonis, and he's just sort of a very sympathetic guy at the end. He's a real sort of a-hole in the beginning, right? Because he's
Mhm.
just greedy and he wants to run this company. So much so, his son doesn't even like him. But he kind of gets screwed by his son, and he ends up in this very sympathetic, demented, physically deformed character. But it's just sort of unsatisfying how it ends. It really should have had a much better ending. It felt very rushed. So I
Mhm.
really would think,
Sort of like this part,
yeah, it would be great to see Adonis have another crack at a storyline.
but he's dead.
Well, is he? Is anybody ever really dead in comics?
Okay. Now tell me again about this. Adonis goes to hell and he has to spend time with who?
So Persephone is the goddess of hell. She's married to who is she married to? She's married to the god of the underworld, Hades.
Oh, okay.
Hades. Yeah. So she's cheating on him in the first place. So I guess he's okay
Wait a
with
minute. So
that.
Persephone is banging Adonis in hell?
Yeah. Yeah. Nicely put. Yeah. Like you summarized it nicely. Yes.
Okay. Just no wonder
But in
Hades
all
is pissed.
fairness, Aphrodite was banging Ares, the god of war. So they both had significant others, but they were still fighting over Adonis. You know what that's
Interesting.
like.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
All right. Good one. All right. So let's do the top 10 according to VH1 one hit wonder. Are you ready for this one, Bob?
I'm absolutely ready.
Okay. So this one, this is gonna be an easy one. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the lyrics. You have to guess the song.
All right.
All right. You and I in a little toy shop, buy a bag of balloons with the money we've got. Set them free at the break of dawn till one by one they were gone.
Love it.
Back at base, sparks in the software flashed a message. Something's out there. Floating in the summer sky. What is it?
99 Luftballons.
That's right.
Nina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great song. Great
Yeah.
song.
Bonus points if you can guess the year it came out.
Oh, was it 1982?
Oh, so close. 1983.
Oh, yeah.
1983.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. 99 Luftballons by Nina from Germany.
Yeah.
And that was number 10 on the VH1 One Hit Wonders.
Nice. All right, Rick. Let's proceed to number 9. Who do you got for number 9?
Number 9. Okay, so this one, Bob, I'm gonna go with the villain called Ballistic.
Ooh, Ooh, not the lip thing. No, it's Blistex.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. No, this is Blistic, Blistik.
Okay.
And if you remember the cover to this one, this came out in 1993. It had a cover date of October. It was Captain America 422. So it was in the middle, of the Mark Grunwald run. And the art at this time was by Rick Levins. And on the cover, it's like Captain America. Then there's this guy in like this purple armor with this battle staff, and they're kind of over this in the sky. And it's interesting looking character. It's totally 90s looking. He had this kind of purple armor, and then he had shoulder pads, of course. And they were kind of like an orangey gold color, and then he had orange pouches around his waist. You know what were in the pouches, Bob?
Mints.
Chapstick.
Yes.
And then he had this battle staff, which allowed him to fly, and he could fire out of it. So his name was Victor Lillian, and he liked to consider himself the protector of the quality of urban life.
Yes.
He was a self-named urban avenger in New York. He's a vigilante. So, and he had questionable and often violent methods of upholding order, as he liked to think of it. So he had, like in this issue, he attacked a group of teens because they had loud music, and who hasn't wanted to do that?
Yeah, who hasn't done that? Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
He blew up a van because it drove through a red light, which they all nearly hit a pedestrian, and then he had, people were yelling at him, so he breaks out his weapons. So anyway, he eventually comes into conflict with Cap, and Fabian Stankiewicz. Do you remember him?
Yeah, it was one of like Cap's team, right?
Yeah. Now,
Avengers?
before he was Cap's team, he was actually a villain, and he attacked the Avengers Mansion, and eventually he went on the good side, and Cap brought him in as kind of like a tech guy. During the what was it? The ice. What was the Streets of Poison?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Streets of Poison story. I think he got addicted to the ice.
Right. Yeah.
So he kind of gone through some tough times. He's battled, some demons. And so he climbs up onto the Brooklyn Bridge with the idea that he's going to jump off, right, and commit suicide. Now, Blistic gets annoyed with Fabian because he's causing a scene. He's disrupting traffic.
Oh yeah.
So,
rush hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So he basically is trying to move it along. So he encourages Fabian to jump quickly. Right. So Cap arrives, tries to talk to Fabian, which annoyed Blistic even more. Blistic then shocks Cap with his energy staff. And then for good measure, Blistic actually tries to push Fabian off the bridge. And fortunately, Cap was able to rally and stop him, and eventually knocking Blistic into the river. And he hasn't been seen since. Now, I do like the fact, because he says to Fabian, jump if you're going to. See those rubberneckers down there? Those police cars? It's going to be rush hour soon. Your indecision is disrupting traffic.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think this was the precursor to the movie Michael Douglas Falling Down.
Right. It sounds a lot like him. Yeah,
right?
It does.
I think he's, it's like Michael Douglas's character. He just snaps. He grabs this soup. Somehow he has his battle armor suit and his battle staff. And he just goes out there and it starts taking care of annoyances in the city.
He sounds like he would be perfect for an HOA board. So
especially in Florida. All right. So, and then one of the notable quotes is, perhaps you did not hear me over the sound of your own noise pollution. I said, lower the volume of your ghetto blasters, or I shall find you all guilty of an inner city quality of life infraction and deal with you accordingly.
I love that phrase.
Inner city quality of life infraction.
Beautiful. Yeah. That should be an acronym. And ICQLI.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Uh, Here's a little fun fact, Bob.
Yeah.
The idiomatic ballistic, uh, the usage derives from the second generation of jet fighters. You probably
Nice.
knew this, right? Aren't
Oh,
they had
yeah.
guided missiles on them in the late
Right.
1950s and the 60s, and when a fully powered non-ballistic guided missile goes ballistic,
Yeah.
that's a malfunction
That's a bad
which
thing.
causes them to assume a free fall.
Yeah. I remember, I used to shoot missiles, Rick, and they were guided missiles. And you had to, with the system I used, you had to keep the radar pointed at the aircraft. And then the missile would follow the reflected energy beam that bounced off the aircraft.
Right?
So the operator, not me, of course, I just hit the button when it flashed to fire the missile.
Okay.
The enlisted guys would actually have to steer it,
Uh-huh.
to its endpoint. But if it lost that reflected energy signal, it would go ballistic and it would just into the ground. Eventually it would just boop,
But
and
did you deactivate them so they don't
yeah, it did have
blow
it
up
did
when it hits
it
the ground?
yeah, it had a self-destruct sequence, and so you could initiate that yourself from afar, or after it lost radar lock for, I think it was 3 or 4 seconds, it would self-destruct anyway. So, but it would go
Interesting.
into that free fall ballistic, trajectory. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I think this idea of going ballistic, that phrase was used a lot in this era, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why Mark Grunwald came up with this character, right?
Mhm.
And then, it's funny, Bob, I was having flashbacks to when you were talking about you firing missiles. Yeah, I used to do the same thing with the game called Missile Command. And
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about that game in
yeah.
probably 40 years. But
That's the
yeah,
training we did.
yeah,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little
They
Missile
sat us in a
Command.
living room in somebody's basement, and they just put us in front of Atari to do
Hmm.
Missile Command. Yeah.
Excellent.
So
Was that
cheap.
Activision? I don't
It was
remember.
cheap. I don't, yeah, try. I think it was Missile Command that I had on Atari, right? Missile
Yeah, well,
Command.
that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Missile Command.
Was
Yeah,
it
yeah.
Missile? Yeah. So, and it was just, you fire the missiles up, right?
Yeah. Was there a dome? I think there was a
Yeah. There was a
dome.
dome. Right. Yeah. Right. Oh, that was fun stuff.
Yeah.
Good
All
stuff.
right, Bob. Let's get to number 9 on the VH1 top 10 one-hit wonders. You ready for this one? This one's gonna
I
be a little.
am. I
This one's
am.
a little harder, Bob.
It's a little harder.
Yeah.
Like, because the number's lower, or
Yeah. Well, this one's a little
yeah.
harder.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. It's a guy by the name of, you probably remember this guy, Rick, very famous guy, well known,
Mm-hmm.
Agron.
Wait, dude, I
Everybody.
haven't gotten into the one-hit wonder yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
This this one's gonna be a little harder, Bob.
All right. Okay. I'm ready. Let me
All
hold on.
right.
Let me limber up.
I'm gonna skip the first 4 lines because they're in Spanish.
Should be able to pull those off flawlessly at this point.
Oh, I'll get to
Come on,
this second. All right.
Enrique.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't drink or smoke, ain't into dope. Won't try no coke. Ask me how I do it. I cope. My only addiction has to do with the female species. I eat them raw like sushi.
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, that is Rico Suave by Geraldo.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Rico Suave.
Rico Suave. Yeah.
All right. What year was that?
Oh gosh.
I don't know. Gosh, Rico Suave.
I don't know. That one
Did you
was.
see that? There was a big scandal here, just like, well, not a big
Oh
scandal.
wait, you went. Hold on, Rico Suave. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. That. Let me pull that up. I had it right here. That was 1991.
Oh, okay. 1991. I think I was asleep that year. So, okay. That
Okay.
makes sense. All right. There's a big scandal. Did you see the big, was it like a scandal? Maybe it's too strong of a word, but there was like a big hubbub, a to-do
Oh
a couple weeks ago,
yeah.
3 weeks ago, something like that. Kanye West had a birthday party and they served like sushi off like naked women. Did you see that?
Ah.
Yeah.
So he eats it raw too.
He's around too. So big fan of Rico Suave, apparently. Yeah.
Ah. Maybe
Yeah.
that's where he got his inspiration.
Yeah.
All right, Bob. What's number 8 on our top 10 list?
All right. Number 8 on our top 10 list is another very famous bad guy that you probably are well aware of, Rick. Guy by the name of Agron. Ring a bell?
No.
No, of course not. Yeah, Agron,
Sorry.
another one-shot wonder that appeared in precisely two
Isn't that
issues.
something that we have in our attics or something like that? It's like bad for us.
Don't they do a test? Can you do a test for that? Yeah. Gives you like butt cancer or something. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, Agron, created by Jack Kirby, of course, right? First appeared in Captain America number 204 with a cover date of December 1976.
Mhm.
So interesting character. This guy, Agron, comes from the Earth's distant future, what they refer to as Earth 76216, as opposed to Earth 616. So same Earth, but distant future, where basically the Earth is getting ready to, the sun has increased size, the moon is getting ready to crash into the Earth, everything's going to hell in a handbasket.
Mm.
And humanity, what's left of it anyway, has evolved into bodiless forms. They're basically disembodied mental energy. And so Agron finds a way to flee his time period and go back to what at that time contemporary Earth. So he shows up, and this mental energy finds himself a corpse at the mortuary, and he inhabits this corpse. And of course, the corpse starts, walking around doing stuff and acting crazy. So somehow he ends up at Shield's psychiatric facility.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't know you knew psychiatric facility. Shield had one, but they did. And so they start like looking at him, checking him out, and they can't quite figure him out because he doesn't really have a pulse or a heart rate, but he seems to be animated. And so at some point, he gets up and he tries to break out. And who do they call, of course?
Captain America?
Captain America. But you know what Captain America says? He can't
What?
make it. He can't make it right now because he's too busy sitting in his apartment, pining over Sharon.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
it
but
was
fortunately,
1976,
it
Bob.
was 1976. So, but fortunately, in the same psychiatric facility, they've got Sam Wilson and Layla, who have just been rescued from the night people. And so they've got some mental issues going on at this point. They're not acting quite right. And so they call Sam to come and help out and capture this Agron character and slap him back into wrist and leg irons. And he can't do it. Agron's too strong for him. It seems like every time he wakes up, he is stronger, and then he like falls back asleep when he runs out of energy, but he wakes up again. He's bigger, more muscular, and stronger. So eventually they get Sam and Cap together, and they're able to take on Agron, and they eventually trick him into getting so mad at Cap and Falcon that he leaves the body and just takes the form of pure mental energy because he's much more powerful that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's exactly what they wanted to do, because as soon as he did that, they were able to trap him in this containment tube.
Was it like the Ghostbusters?
It was just like the Ghostbusters. And then that was the end of it. That's the last we see of Agron. Apparently, they just reel him off to some Shield storage facility, and we never hear from him again. And so, Agron, right before they capture him, he says, "I am Agron. This time period must become my own. I shall not be ousted from this century." That's a great Agron quote. But unfortunately, he wasn't ousted from that century, but he didn't quite make it his own.
Oh, not as good as your Adonis quote. I'm seeing, Bob, you need to do more voices when we cover comics.
Yeah, I'm new at this.
You totally need to do more.
So anyway, Agron, a little bit of a disappointing character, but it had a lot of potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
This disembodied mental energy that could inhabit different bodies. He's from the future Earth, right? He's not an alien. He's a future human. And so maybe they could bring him back and use him in a different way. Who knows, right? But an interesting villain nonetheless, even if he sort of got short shrift in this particular 2-issue story.
All right. JMS. J. Michael Straczynski, are you? He's the new Cap writer, right, for the next series that's coming out in a few months. Are you listening to this top 10 list? Because we're giving you gold here.
Yeah,
gold.
Yeah.
These are all characters that you could bring back.
And we know everyone who gets captured and held at a Shield containment facility escapes
Eventually.
So
yeah, I'll do.
Yeah.
All right, Bob, you ready for number 8 on VH1's top 10 one-hit wonders?
I am.
All right, here we go.
All right.
We're talking away. I don't know what I'm to say. I'll say it anyway. Today is another day to find you. Shine away. Oh, I'll be coming for your love. Okay? Take on me. Take on me.
Oh yeah, baby. Aha. I think I
That's
got it.
right.
Yeah. Take on me.
1985.
Yep. Yep. A great year. A great
Mm.
year. And a great music video,
Oh, totally. Yeah, with the
right?
whole animation and the black and
Yeah.
white, and they're
Jumping in and out
going
of,
around back and forth
yeah.
between reality and animation. Like, hey, for comic lovers like us, that's a cool video.
That was groundbreaking, at the time. And yeah, awesome stuff, man.
Yeah.
Reminds me, like, everybody's like, oh, Into the Spider-Verse, such a great movie. I'm like, ow, aha, did that back in 1985.
That's right. Fun song. I like this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to number 7. I'm going to do this one, Bob. Number 7 on our list of one and done villains for Cap is Sultan of Swing.
Nice.
Sultan is an acronym, and so it is all capital letters with periods in between. Sultan. Sultan. Do you know what it stands for, Bob?
I do, Rick, but I'm going to let you tell me.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's the systematic, ultimate, lawless takeover of all nations.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Sultan usually is also a name for like a ruler or a king, typically like in a Muslim state. But
Or in
yeah,
a Disney movie.
exactly.
Yeah.
So this particular character, his real name is unknown, but he was a just a normal guy, who worked as a weapon designer for Shield, and he was dismissed from Shield because of shall we say mental instability. And so he ends up establishing this island base off the coast of Maine, where he constructs an army of robots, and they're called Biotrons, and he creates several ultra sophisticated nuclear missiles, one of which he plans to launch at our capital, Washington, D.C.
I like the plan so far.
Yeah. So, that sounds stable, right? Now, in Captain America issue 265, which it had a cover date of October 1981, this was a 2-part story. It was 265 and 266, which, by the way, we covered in episode 42. I highly, highly, highly recommend listeners out there, go listen to episode 42. I remember when we did our annual review at the end, and you asked me, like, what was your favorite episode we've done? I think I listed this because we had so much fun. We had laughed our butts off during this particular story. So anyway, in issue 265, he kidnaps Cap with a molecular transfer unit, but Nick Fury and Spider-Man eventually track down Cap to Sultan's lair. Now, unfortunately, they're also captured by Sultan. Now, afterwards, Sultan makes good on his promise, and he launches the first of his nuclear missiles at Washington, D.C. Now, in the course of escaping and engaging in battle with Sultan and his Biotrons, they discover that Sultan can transfer his consciousness by using a small detachable flying disc that can fly to another robot body. So he just kind of, goes and zaps in between using this little disc. Now, Nick Fury figures this out, and he destroys the flying disc, therefore putting an end to Sultan.
Oh,
yeah. Now, the reason I picked this one and why he's number 7 on our list, many reasons, Bob. I already established episode 42, fun episode, but I also have some original art that features Sultan. So I have a page from issue 265, which is I think it's the second to last page of the story, where Cap and Spider-Man are battling Sultan's Biotrons. And so it's a fun page. Cap's protecting him, Spider-Man with the shield, and then Spider-Man picks him up and they swing off. And then you turn the page and you find out, oh no, they swung off the floating island that's up in the sky, and they're falling to their doom. Then and this is the big part, Bob. Issue 266, I actually have the cover to this. And this was like my grail, right? Getting a Mike Zeck Captain
Right.
America cover. This I so lucky I was able to get this. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to get another cover because they're not cheap, but I treasure this. And I'm looking at them right now. Both of these things are framed side by side on my wall, right here in my man cave with my Cap stuff. And so that's the other reason. So Sultan is he's a fun character for me for a lot of reasons.
I've heard this word Biotron before, Rick. Why is that?
So Biotron, fun fact, is it's a robot co-pilot that in an ally of Commander Arcturus Ron. Do you remember the Micronauts comics?
Yeah, that was like a toy line or something, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So they made
something?
it was a toy line that was kind of around the time of like Transformers and stuff like that. So they Micronauts were their own version, and so they made Marvel had the license and made comics, and so Biotron first appeared in Micronauts #1, which came out in 1978, and then met his demise in issue 27. Interesting.
So, yeah, the Biotron sounded familiar.
Yes. Do you want a notable quote from Sultan?
Yeah, I definitely.
Right. I don't remember the Sultan voice that I did way back in episode 42, but I'm going to go with this. All I have done, including the complete recreation of my own body, is nothing compared to what I will do once I rule the world, and rule I shall. For Sultan leaves nothing to blind fate, not even the plummeting death of Captain America.
That's when Nick Fury shoots his flying disc. Yeah.
Is that what? Bummer.
Well, I forgot that one. Damn.
Yeah.
An interesting character. Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a few weeks ago I was in, I don't know, some Marvel group, maybe it was like comic book fans, through 86 or something, like Marvel comic fans through 86. Somebody was like really trying hard to remember who this villain was. And they were like, oh, it was a guy that was sort of like cyborg, and like he could detach his consciousness could move from body to body. And most people are like, oh, that's Machine Smith. And he's like, no, not Machine Smith. I can't remember what story it was. I can't remember who the villain was. And finally somebody said, oh yeah, it's Sultan, right? With his flying disc and all that. So an obscure character for sure.
And did you go of swing? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Every time I see it, I want to do that.
Good
All right,
choice.
Bob. Top 10. Here we are on VH1's One Hit Wonders. We are at number 7. And I'm gonna give you the lyrics. All right. This is gonna be an easy one, Bob. Right. Totally easy. Ready?
Yep.
Yo, VIP, let's kick it. All right, stop. Collaborate and listen. Ice is back with a brand new invention.
Was that a one hit?
Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Ice, baby.
I can't believe that was a one-hit wonder.
Really? You can't believe that. All
Vanilla
right, name another song that Vanilla Ice did.
He's been around so long. Doggone, he even has a show on like HGTV or something, doesn't he?
I don't know.
I think he did for a while, just recently. I remember watching a couple episodes that they did like home reno or something, flipping homes with Vanilla Ice or something.
Dance. Go rush the speaker that booms. I'm killing your brain like a poisonous mushroom.
He never got the respect
when I play a dope medley. Anything less than the beast is felony. All right.
Oh, that's a classic, man.
Yep. Classic. All right, so let's get to number 6, Bob.
All right, number 6.
Who do you got?
I am gonna go, Rick, with the man with no face.
But AKA, how can you tell it's him?
Hatchet Man. So interesting character. Now we said at the outset that we would allow characters that originated in the Golden Age, as long as they were only used once in the silver, bronze, modern age, right? So this qualifies. So the man with no face first appeared in Captain America number 77 with a cover date of July 1954 in a story called The Man with No Face. So technically his creators are Don Rico and John Romita, the senior. So in the original story back in 1954, it has Cap and Bucky show up at a crime scene, and there's an Asian man, a Chinese man, who is a police officer, a police lieutenant by the name of Philip Wing, and they had just apprehended a Chinese guy running around with a hatchet, and so they take him down and turn him into the authorities. And Philip Wing starts talking to Captain Bucky, and he says, "Hey, there's a big conspiracy going on. Apparently, there's this guy who is working for the Chinese Communist Party back in Beijing, and he's shaking down families over here by telling them that their relatives back in China or they're not safe if they don't pay some money, and that money's getting filtered back to Beijing for the party."
Mm-hmm.
And so they hatch this plan because it turns out Philip Wing's own brother lives in China, and he's being threatened. And so they want Officer Wing to pay up. So they decide that Officer Wing is going to go meet this guy, this man with no face, the Hatchet Man,
Mm-hmm.
and Cap and Bucky are going to surveil from a distance and then capture him when the two meet up. And so it goes down just like the plan, except this guy runs away. And so Cap's got to, and remember in the retcon, this is William Burnside and Jack Monroe, who are filling the roles of Cap and Bucky at this point. So Cap is running after this man with no face, and he finally catches up to him on this rooftop, and the guy pulls off his mask, and it turns out, oh my God, it's a dead ringer for Philip Wing, Officer Wing. It's his brother, the one, the one he thought was in China. He's the guy with the man with no face, and he runs and he jumps off the edge of the building. And at the end of the story, we hear that he was so disfigured in this accident that his face is no longer recognizable, but they never actually say that he's dead. And so 55 years later, in volume 5 of Captain America, issue number 44, we see the man with no face again. Of course, at this point, it's Bucky who is wearing Cap's uniform, right? And man with no face is with Batroc de Lippe, and they're fighting Bucky. And so for the next 4 or 5 issues up to issue 48, there's this story where it turns out that the man with no face is helping another character by the name of the Iron Nail, Ron Shen, and they're trying to recover the body of the original Human Torch because another guy, Dr. Chen, back in China, wants to create this virus that will basically kill off half the population, sort of deal, a little Thanos-like dealio. And so eventually, with Black Widow and Namor's help, they managed to track down this mad professor and his protector, the man with no face. There's a big struggle, and Namor takes the opportunity when this guy is distracted, because it turns out that when he fell off that building, they sent him back to China, and the Chinese experimented on him to turn him into a super soldier, but it didn't quite work the way they expected. And so he didn't have any enhanced abilities other than the ability to phase himself out so that he couldn't be touched, like your hand would go right through him.
Mm-hmm.
But Namor took the opportunity when this guy reached down and touched the body of his master, his leader, the mad professor. He turned solid at that point, and Namor reached down and snapped his neck. So that was the end of the man with no face.
Sounds like a man with no head.
Yeah, Namor's a strong dude.
Totally.
So interesting story. I love how they brought back this guy from a single story from 1954 and filled out his whole backstory in that 5 issues. They had a flashback to Bucky back when he was the Winter Soldier, dealing with the man with no face back in China, when he was obviously working for the Soviet Union at the time, and then the flashback to the modern era when Cap was serving as Captain America. So it's a really great use of an obscure character, but it was a one-shot wonder. He only appeared in that one arc, and apparently he was killed at the end of it. So
well, that is I don't remember that. I mean, I remember reading that Ed Brubaker story back in, I don't know, was it 2007
Yeah,
maybe? Or actually, no, actually it
2008,
was
2009.
2009. It was,
Yeah.
now I'm looking it up. Yeah, 2009. Okay. But I haven't read it since.
Hmm.
I'll have to go back and take a look at that.
Yeah. He had a real look. He looked like the Shadow,
Mm-hmm,
with the fedora,
mm-hmm.
right, and a long cape, right, and so very much like a like a super spy as opposed to a super soldier.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. So tell me, why did he make it all the way up to number 6? What was it about him that put him above Argon, Agron,
Oh,
or
Agron.
Adonis, or
Yeah.
Ballistic, or
Yeah.
whoever?
Right. Well, here's the thing, Rick. I love this idea, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later. With a couple other characters. I love the idea of like super soldier experiments gone awry. Right. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
Cap was, the original, and other countries have tried to duplicate the efforts, whether it's Masterman or, some of these other characters, the Red Guardian. They've tried to recreate the super soldier serum, and they never quite get it right. And so
Yeah.
this guy is an example of one of the few that we've heard of where the Chinese government tried to create their own super soldier, and it didn't quite work out. But he was super in his enhancements in a particular way that are kind of unique
Mm-hmm.
in this realm. And so I love characters like that. So that's one of the reasons I picked this guy. And also I just love the fact that they resurrected this guy from an obscure. There were only 16 stories in the 1950s with all the different iterations of young men and men's adventures, and the
Mm-hmm.
relaunch of the Cap series. 16 Cap stories, and the Man with No Face was featured in one of those 16. So I love that they plucked him out of obscurity in that series and used him again in a very meaningful and interesting way in a modern story.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that merits all the good reasons why he made it to number 6. All right. So number 6 on the VH1's greatest one-hit wonders. Are you ready for this one?
All right, lay it on me.
All right. I'm gonna have to skip the first refrain because it gets right into the refrain, and that just gives it away. So I'm gonna get right in. I'm gonna skip a little bit here. Well, the party was nice. The party was pumping. Hey ya, yippee ya yo, and everybody having a ball. Huh. Yippee ya yo. I tell the fellows start the name calling. Yippee ya yo, and the girls respond to the call. I heard a woman shout out, "Who let the dogs out? Who?
Who.
Who let the dogs out?" That was 2000,
Oh
Bob.
my God, we scared the cat. Right. He's like, who let the dogs out?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't
That
even know who sang that, Rick.
that was the Baja Men,
The
Bob.
Baja Man.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Give them their due. Their
I
one hit
guess.
that
Yeah.
everybody knows.
They're no Milli Vanilli, but yeah, you're
That's
right.
true. Millie Vanilli at least had multiple.
Yeah, they had two
Yeah.
or three.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Right. Maybe they didn't sing their own songs, but still.
Well,
All right. I'm gonna
can't be everything to everyone.
All right, we're at halftime, Bob. So now we're counting down from 5, right? On our top 10 one and done Cap villains.
Yeah.
I got number 5, Bob. This one's gonna be a little bit more recent.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go for a little bit more recent times. It might be, some might even say this one is gonna be a little controversial.
Ooh, I like that.
All right, number 5 is Dr. Mindbubble. Exactly.
Yeah.
Some have called him the psychedelic super soldier. Now, he was introduced in Captain America Volume 7, which is the Rick Remender one, the one we're covering with the Escape from Dimension Z storyline. Well, later on in that series, issue 14, he is introduced, and he actually ends up being in, I want to say he ends up being in 5 issues. So still one and done, right? Still one story.
Right.
I'll say the reason it's controversial, Bob, is he did kind of make an appearance somewhere else. And it
Mhm.
was there was a Winter Soldier miniseries that came out at the same time
Yeah.
that this story came out, and it was called The Bitter March. And so he had a brief appearance in issue 2 of that, which again was going on at the same time as Captain America in 2014. And so Dr. Mindbender was in issues 15 and then 17 through 20.
Hmm.
Now, why is it controversial? Well, because we left out the Iron Nail. Now,
Yeah,
the
we did.
Iron Nail we left out because same thing. He was in multiple issues of that volume because Dr. Mindbender actually worked for him, but he ended up being in like 1 through 5 of the Winter Soldier Bitter March. So that was a little bit more than we could just kind of overlook.
But he was also in, at least briefly, he appeared in that story I just told you about with the man with no face.
Yes.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we didn't include him for that part. Now, I want to say shout out to Joshua K. Reardon in the Facebook group because Joshua was the one who actually suggested Dr. Mind Bubble. So he made it. Good job, Josh. So here he is at number 5. Now, little information about Horace Littleton. So he was part of the Weapons Minus program that Shield ran in the 1960s. Now, Weapons Minus was somehow kind of involved with creating some other characters in the Marvel universe, but so he worked back in the 1960s, which is interesting, right? Because this story came out in 2014, and his job was to work on countermeasures for human enhancement developed in the Weapon Plus program, um, beginning with Project Rebirth. Now, he worked on a number of projects, including one designed to facilitate humane assassinations. I like that. Eventually, he became involved in a project that used LSD to boost this hybrid super soldier serum. So his funding dried up, and without any more human test subjects, he started to do what a lot of mad scientists do, right? He started to experiment on himself. And he discovered that it gave him the ability to create hallucinogenic mind bubbles that come out of a tube that is implanted in his forehead. And these mind bubbles capture his enemy's mind. And then they create a virtual reality where the affected live out their heart's desire. So actually kind of sound, and that's where the whole humane assassination comes from, right? Like they're
Right. Yeah.
they're in a peaceful place and they're happy. But Dr. Mindball was also able to manipulate the virtual reality of those trapped inside those mind maps and creating illusions along the way. Now, once the victim had outlived their usefulness, Dr. Mindbubble then killed them with their greatest desire, which kind of sounds a little twisted. Now, here's the key. The only way to escape this reality of the mind bubbles is to commit a virtual suicide inside the false life that's generated by the bubbles before the fantasy kills you. And so that's basically how it happened, right? So we'll cut to the end, but essentially Dr. Mind Bubble puts Cap inside one of these hallucinogens, and Cap starts to feel like, he's living in this world where he wakes up and everything works out well. And he's got his young son, Ian Rogers, there. He's got Sharon, she's back, right? Who he thought was dead. His whole family, his friends are there, and they're having this big parade and everything's perfect. But he's like, a little too perfect. And then he realizes what's going on, and he jumps off the balcony and he commits this quote unquote virtual suicide, which breaks him out. And then he fights Dr. Mindbender, who also is there with the Iron Nail, and he uses his shield and throws it at him, which damages the tube coming out of Dr. Mindbubble's forehead. And then without a way to release the mind bubbles, Dr. Mind Bubble, his own mind, then he becomes overcome with dreams within dreams, and then he runs outside of Helicarry, presumably falling to his death.
Holy cow.
Yep.
That's such a great character.
Yes, and I'm assuming he has a British accent, the way he's dressed.
He does have a little bit of a Willy Wonka look to him.
He does.
You know?
Yeah, he's got the bowler hat and the cane,
Yeah.
and he's got the suit.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he's British.
Yeah. I don't know. Horace Littleton. It does have that ring to it, right?
Yeah, Horace.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Come on.
How many
Right?
Americans name Horace?
Yeah, nobody would do that.
No.
Really great character and fascinating. And that story arc was, I mean, it was powerful. I mean, that mind bubble that Steve was trapped in and everything that he experienced. I mean, you really felt that for him, right? I mean, that was.
Oh yeah, when he came out, he was angry. He's like, you used
sad.
my family against me. Yeah, he was furious. In fact, he was so angry, he comes charging at Dr. Mind Bubble.
Yeah.
And here's a fun quote. Dr. Mind Bubble says, "Heavens, here he comes to punch away all his bad feelings." I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That was a good line. Yeah. Really well written story. So, and the interesting thing about this, a little bit of a fun fact, I love when creators sort of take real history and they create something new from it, right? And so, which is exactly what he did here with Dr. Mind Bubble. So he talks about back in the 1960s when he started his research in humane assassination for SHIELD, and that was exactly the time in real history when the U.S. government and specifically the Central Intelligence Agency was doing a lot of research around the use of LSD. What is that? Lysergic acid diethylamide, right? So, I mean, we know Timothy Leary and all that stuff that happened in the 60s, early 70s with dropping acid. But in the 50s and 60s, this was largely, the government using this and experimenting with it. And one of the things they did was this project called Project MK Ultra. And one of the sub projects was this thing called Operation Midnight. And what they were trying to do was figure out if LSD could be used to interrogate people, to get people like a form of truth serum. And so what they would do is they hired a bunch of prostitutes that would then
all right, I like this so far.
You like it so far? Yeah. They would go out, they hire prostitutes, and the prostitutes would go out and find some Johns. Those are men who pay prostitutes, Rick. I know you're not.
I thought you meant bathrooms. Okay.
CD technology. And then they would bring them back to CIA safe houses where they would do the deed, right? And then drop a little, along the way, they drop a little acid into the client's drink or whatever, or whatever. Who knows where they put it? And so after the deed, they would then try to question them, extract information from them, get them to tell them things. And all the while, the CIA operatives, and the FBI was involved in this as well, would be behind one-way mirror, right? Observing the whole thing and recording the whole thing for later analysis. And so, and sometimes
analysis.
Mm-hmm. And apparently sometimes they were even fed subliminal messages in attempts to induce them to commit involuntary actions that maybe they had never even thought of or dreamt of before, such as, robbery or assault, or even their proclivity, their willingness to conduct assassination. So This was all real history of things that our government did in the late 50s and 60s. And so this idea of Dr. Mind Bubble, experimenting with this technology, is really based on real world things, which makes the character so much more interesting.
Yeah, totally. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's like a old Manchurian Candidate feel to it.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's a great character, and I will say, recently I read that volume 2 of Hail Hydra, which is that 4-issue miniseries with Ian Rogers in the alternate battle world. Run by Dr. Doom, and Dr. Mind Bubble is in that too, but we don't count that because that's an alternate universe.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Yeah. If it's not the 616, it don't count.
Yeah. The
other thing we don't count is if they're in flashbacks, right?
Right. Yeah.
If someone takes a character and just says, well, we're just going to do a retcon here and do this and well, no, the character's dead, right? So they are technically one and done. So you could fill in backstories all you want, but they were a one and done.
Yeah. Although I would like to see Mind Bubble come back. Maybe he survived that. Maybe he was caught by somebody in a floating car or whatever and somehow survived. He's such a great character. It's a shame that when he would be a one and done sort of deal.
I don't know. I see him, and I see him as being kind of like a silly character. He has like an Austin Powers feel
He
to him,
does. He does.
I'm just,
Yeah.
to see him, yeah, baby, yeah, it's
But it's such an interesting power that he has.
it is.
And what he can like do to people. It's really, really quite.
I mean, the fact that it's based on drugs,
yeah,
because you can have the telekinetics, right? Or the ones who can control minds and read minds and put thoughts in people's heads. But this is interesting because it's actually some sort of drug induced hallucinogen.
Right. Yeah. And everybody responds differently. So, in this arc, of course, he traps Nick Fury in the mind bubble. He traps Maria Hill in the mind bubble. In that Hail Hydra series I just mentioned, he traps Ellie Rogers, who is the daughter of Sharon Carter and Steve Rogers in that alternate world. And you see, what she sees in her heart's desires. I mean, it's really interesting how that power can be used to get people to see and do things.
All right, Bob, let's get to number 4, VH1 Greatest Hit Wonders. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, I'm gonna have to really skip ahead because the title to the song is in like so many of the opening lines.
All right.
So I'm gonna have to skip ahead.
All right.
I'm a model. You know what I mean. And I do my little turn on the catwalk. Yeah, on the catwalk.
Oh, I love this song.
I do my little turn on the catwalk.
Yeah.
I'm too sexy for my love. Too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
I love that song.
Too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy it hurts.
I have no idea who sings it.
Oh man, come on, that's right. That's Right Said Fred.
Right? Is that really the name of the
Right Said Fred? Yeah.
Right Said Fred. Okay.
1991.
All right. I love that song. I didn't realize it was that old though. My goodness.
Bob, I skipped number 5. I did.
We'll just circle back around.
We'll circle back to number 5 that I skipped on the list. All right. So let's get to number 4 on our one and done, Bob.
I have got a great character for you. So I know we haven't, even in the podcast, we haven't given as much love as maybe we should to Volume 4. And there's some great villains in Volume 4, right? The Interrogator was a great villain with his alien hand. But the one I want to talk about is a guy by
Connie Ferreira.
Connie
Ferreira. No, that's Volume 3. Sorry.
Yeah. Volume 4 is that quirky one, right? Yeah, that's with the really long storylines. That's hard to cover in a podcast. So we've kind of shied away from some of those.
We did the Cap Lives.
We did the Cap Lives one. That was a fun one. So the guy I want to talk about, Anali Redpath. Do you remember Anali?
Nope.
Well, he's a great character and it's a great story. And so it takes place between Anali Redpath shows up in Captain America Volume 4, number 7, cover date of February 2003. And the story arc continues through issue 11. So these issues are done by Chuck Austin and Jay Lee. And Anali is a great character. So he starts off, he is a good friend of Steve Rogers and a colleague, a S.H.I.E.L.D. colleague. They worked together a number of times over the years. And in fact, Steve, at the beginning of that first issue, is telling somebody about how Anali once took a bullet for him. Even though Anali already had taken 4 bullets and was wounded, he still jumped in front of a bullet to protect Steve from getting shot. So he's that kind of guy, right? He's a guy that Steve trusts. But in the second issue of that arc, issue 8, Steve is recounting one of the times when he and Anali worked together years before. And they're in the Balkans, and they're there on a humanitarian mission providing aid to refugees. And Anali tells him, no, that's not why we're here. We're actually here. That's a cover. We're here to go break into this prisoner camp where they're holding women and children. And we're going to go there, and we're going to rescue the women and children, and we're going to kill all the guards because they're bad guys. And the reason I'm here is because those are the sorts of things you won't do. And so Steve's like, oh, no, I'm going to go with you. And so they go. And of course, they're getting ready to infiltrate this prison camp and take out the guard who's on the tower. And Steve, now in his Captain America uniform, says, no, let me try something different. Right. And now he's like, no. And Steve does. He tries something different. It's a successful mission. They rescue 182 women and children, and no casualties on their side. In fact, nobody gets killed, including the bad guys. They arrest them all.
Nice.
Yeah. And in the process of this mission, Anali asks Steve this question. He says, who's the better American, Steve? The man who does what his government asks, no matter what, or the man who runs around dressed in a flag and lives a higher ideal than the country whose name he shares? So we left.
That's a great question.
It is a great question, right? And we're left thinking about that question. So back in the previous issue, it starts with Steve getting a call from Nick Fury that lets him know that his friend Anali has been found dead down in Florida. And he wants Steve to head down to investigate. So Steve goes down there to where this SHIELD had a human engineering facility called the Smokehouse. And he finds that what happened was Anali had gone there to investigate that facility. And he had run into this other SHIELD renegade agent called Barricade, and he got shot and killed. Yeah, right? So wow. Steve runs into the same guy, Barricade, and this guy is getting ready to like fry him. Apparently he's a pyromaniac, and he's going to like burn up Steve, but he's also going to burn up the school bus of children. And Steve surrenders himself to Barricade in order to prevent this. And the guy says, now we're going to waste everybody anyway, and we're going to kill you too. So, right. So like now he's in a pickle, but out of nowhere, Anali shows up, and everybody's surprised because he's supposed to be dead. Right. Yeah. But it turns out that the first time that Anali was killed, now he's a Native American, indigenous American. I remember the Lakota Sioux tribe. And so he had prayed to the thunder god of indigenous peoples, Hyoka. Hyoka had transferred his consciousness into a clone. And so he survived that way. And not only that, he can channel the Indian thunder god's powers. And so he shows up at this time, and he completely kills Barricade and all of Barricade's men. And he explains to Steve, he releases Steve, and he says, look, for too long, the American people have trampled on the rights of indigenous Native Americans. And this is our land, and it's time for us to take it back. And so his plan is he's going to unleash a huge hurricane on Miami. And he gets ready to do that. And he gives Steve one of those, those concoctions, those, what are the other thing, a little bowl like ayahuasca or something like that, sure. To make you have your visions, right? He gives that to Steve, and Steve starts to have all these visions.
I love how you say, the bowl, you have your visions. Like I do this.
Like you do. Well, I see you drinking that with your pretzels sometimes. So I just figured it was the same stuff. So this is going on. But what happens is we find out along the way that whenever the god of Hyoka, the god of thunder, basically the indigenous inversion of Thor, channels himself through Anali's clone, it weakens the clone because the clones are molecularly unstable. And so he has to be able to keep transferring himself every time Hyoka appears. He's got to go to a new clone to get a fresh body. And he just so happens he built his own clone facility back on the Native American Indian reservation where his grandfather lived. So it's great. He's got a fully stocked cabinet of clones. So the whole thing unwinds. Steve's having these weird visions with Red Skull and Bucky, and he thinks it's Sharon, but it's actually Hannah, the Lemurian, I think. And, things are going on, and Nick Fury's pulling his hair out, and Thor shows up and helps Steve finally take on Anali and Hyoka. And say Hyoka, the god of thunder for the indigenous peoples, pulls himself out of Anali's body so that he can go fight Thor. God of Thunder against God of Thunder, which means Anali doesn't have any powers. And so Cap accidentally hurts him so bad that he's dying, right? And he thinks he's going to like transfer his consciousness into another clone. But at the same time, Nick Fury has gone out to the reservation and put a bullet in every clone's head.
Well, that is so Nick Fury.
Isn't it though? Right? Yeah. And his grandfather,
Mhm.
Nali's grandfather's like, you can't do this. My grandson will die forever if you do this. And he's like, ah, too bad, so sad. Right? No clones left. So that means when Anali dies, Anali dies.
Mhm.
And so it's a really, this story is great, Rick, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is it's really deep. It's one of those stories I really like because it asks some tough questions about what does it mean to be an American hero? What does it mean to be a patriot? What does it mean to accept some of the things that America has done and
Mhm.
yet still support the idea of the American dream and what America can be? And there are lots of conversations in this story between Anali and Steve trying to like debate this issue. The quote I provided at the beginning is one of those, right?
Mhm.
And so what I really like is at the end of that rescue mission, Anali has another quote where he says, "We rescued 182 people that day. It took 25 minutes, beginning to end. Not a single life lost. He made me truly believe in America that day. There's nothing stupid about him, but I should have made a distinction between the country and the man."
Mm.
Yeah. So
Nice.
great. So he disappears at the end of this arc, issue number 11, and we don't hear
Mhm.
from him again. But, anything's possible in Marvel Comics.
So why did this make number 4 on your list, Bob?
Well, because the story is so powerful, right? And we don't have that many indigenous American characters in the Marvel universe. There's a handful, and we've seen some of them pop up occasionally in Captain America stories. But it does, I mean, just the depth of the dialogue and the idea that and of course in the Marvel comics there are other gods but besides the Olympian gods and
Mhm.
the Eternals and the Norse gods, there's lots of Native American gods that are represented in Marvel comics in different ways and in different titles. And so Hyoka is just one of those gods. So it's interesting to see a Native American god appear as a champion of the Native American peoples, even if it's maybe in the case of Anali, taken in a direction that, makes him a villain in this case.
Right. And this is another case of kind of going back and retconning previous character, basically saying this character existed way back when, right? It's not a new character, but this character existed before. So it seems like some of these characters have that, in common.
Yeah, they build a history for them, right? They retcon pre-existing history for them.
Yeah.
That explains where they are now. Yeah.
And if you speaking of retcons, like we actually spent a couple of episodes just talking about Captain America retcons. And I highly recommend people check them out. Episodes 84 and 89 are our top 10 other Cap retcons, not the obvious ones, right? Not like Avengers 4 and Winter Soldier and things like that. But these are the other retcons. So some of these could fall into that. These characters could fall into that as far as characters that are new but apparently had a history with Cap prior to being new.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun episodes to listen to.
All right, Bob. So we're going to circle back to the VH1 greatest one-hit wonders. I skipped number 5. I went right to number 4, which was Right Said Fred, I'm Too Sexy. This next one is number 5, and it is I'm going to give it away. There is no part of this song that I can really do without giving away what it is. So I'm just going to do it. Ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Mickey.
Hey,
Hey,
Mickey. I love that song.
Yeah?
I am always put in a happy place when that song comes on the radio. Tony Basil.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. With
Yeah,
that cheerleader
1982.
outfit. Yeah. I'll
Uh-huh.
never forget that as a young man.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was such a simple video, right? It was just
It
a
really was.
white back screen
Yeah.
and all the girls were, cheering as cheerleaders. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a catchy tune.
It is a catchy tune. It's a
And it
fun
made
song.
it made VH1's #5 on greatest
Awesome.
one-hit wonders.
Awesome. Well deserved.
All right, Bob, I'm going to do #3 on our top 10
All right.
list of villains one and done. I'm going to go with Code Name Bravo. So this one's an interesting character, and you know, I you probably have noticed like the ones that I'm picking, like Dr. Mind Bubble, right? Like Dr. Mind Bubble was in 5 issues. Well, Codename Bravo was in 11 issues. Still one story, so it still classifies as one and done. But this was the volume 6, the Ed Brubaker series that came out after the Ed Brubaker series,
Yeah.
right? So we're Cap's back. Steve Rogers is back, and so this one kind of continues some of the storylines from before, but really creates some brand new ones. And one of the ones that they did was this character called Codename Bravo. And talk about retconning, right? The the story kind of gets its impetus from some golden age stuff, right? There was a character by the name of Jimmy Jankovitz, and which went by Jimmy Jupiter.
Mm.
And Jimmy Jupiter first appeared in Marvel Mystery Comics #28 back in the Golden Age. And it was a story called Strange Adventures in the Land of Nowhere. And so Ed Brubaker took this idea and created this whole larger story about this character called Codename Bravo. His name was Richard, but we don't know his last name. And so this was back in 2011, you know, and this is the Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven series. And so Codename Bravo was allegedly a super soldier from the 1920s and 40s and part of a team that was built by Nick Fury, along with Captain America, Peggy Carter, and Dum Dum Dugan to attack Hydra. And so Bravo was enhanced by a variant of the super soldier serum. Consequently, his powers are not comparable with those of Cap, but his, he's still physically superior to other like Olympic level athletes. He uses twice the speed and the strength of a normal human. And so Jimmy Jupiter, getting back to the Golden Age, as a young boy, he developed this power to use his imagination to travel to this fantasy world known as Nowhere. And he could create anything he wanted with his thoughts. So Jimmy was asked by S.H.I.E.L.D. to help create this covert ops team infiltrate a Hydra base using this extra dimensional Nowhere as a shortcut. And unfortunately, he sent Codename Bravo and his, spec op soldiers through the portal to Nowhere. A Hydra spy agent clocked him over the head and put Jimmy into a coma.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah. So this had an effect of trapping both Bravo's team and the group of Hydra agents on the other side. So they had to work together in order to live in Nowhere. And this went on for decades. So they were cooperating to kind of turn this Nowhere into this place that suited them. And there was this mysterious woman from within Nowhere called Hydra Queen. Now, 70 years later, Jimmy, who's obviously now an old man, he emerges from his coma, and though he remained catatonic, his awakening released back into reality all those who've been trapped in Nowhere. So among those were now the combined S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra agents, right? Because they had to work together to live there, and this was led by Bravo. Now, just so you know, Bravo disliked Cap because both he and Cap were, they were smitten with Peggy back during the war, but she only had eyes for Steve. So as soon as he was released into reality from Nowhere, he and the new Hydra Queen started plotting with Baron Zemo and Hydra to destroy Captain America. because, Bravo blamed Cap for his accidental imprisonment as well as for stealing Peggy Carter away from him. So this story kind of goes on, and so as I said, he's in 11 issues, and it's a pretty cool story. And again, it's retconned, right? You take a little bit of something from the Golden Age, and then you expand upon it. Much like what you were talking about, right? With Man with No Face,
Yeah.
and so, but it made for a really, really interesting story. So, yeah, that's why, to me, he makes the top 3 on this list.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that whole volume I think is great. And McNiven's art is fabulous,
Absolutely.
in that series, and I do like the fact that they just plucked this Jimmy Jupiter out of timely history, a kid who was in a lot of books, I think, and a lot of different stories, and used that as the basis for this whole story arc that was really fascinating. And then Bravo having this grudge against Steve over a woman, over Peggy, right? No,
Right.
What happened to bros before, spies, right? I mean,
you wanted to say something else. Well, he also blamed him for being trapped there.
For being trapped. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, you're right. Jimmy Jupiter was, he was in a lot of those timely comics. He was in an additional 19 issues of Marvel Mystery Comics in the 40s. And he had a backup story in Human Torch number 10. So very, very cool, that that Ed Brubaker tapped into that and to create this story.
I also love in this story that there's a great little, and I don't know if you remember that, but there was this great little the sideline where they bring in the Ameridroid again, resurrect.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And that's how they drag Steve Rogers into nowhere along with the Ameridroid and Bravo.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this great little scene where Ameridroid, pulls him in. He's filled his, the responsibility he had was to get Cap into nowhere. And then he transforms into Lyle Decker, a young Lyle Decker. The guy who was a Nazi sympathizer who became the Ameridroid, and he thinks he's happy as a clam because he's young and youthful again in this fantasy land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's a great story. This is volume 6, came out in 2011. This particular story with Codename Bravo went all the way up to issue 18, which was towards the end of 2012. So, one of these days, hopefully we can cover that here on the podcast.
Yeah, I hope so. There's a lot of great stories in that volume, but this being one of them.
All right, Bob, let's get to number 3 on the greatest one-hit wonders. All right. Let me see if I can. This one might be a little tougher. Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Poor old Johnny Ray. He sounded sad upon the radio. Moved a million hearts in mono. Our mothers cried, sang along. Who blamed them? You're grown. You're grown up. So grown up. Now I must say more than ever. Toora-lura, toora-lura, yeah.
Yeah.
And we sing just like our fathers.
Dexy's Midnight Runners?
Come on, Eileen.
Yeah. That's such a good song, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Another song that can take me back in a heartbeat. Dexy's Midnight Runners. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Right. That was in 1983.
Yeah, I can still in my mind's eye, Rick. I haven't seen that video since 1993, and the young blondie in the farmer overalls.
Yeah,
I can.
How you doing?
That penguin is still standing strong on the iceberg.
Is that a euphemism? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah,
all right, Bob. What do you got for number 2? What do you?
All right,
we're in the top 2.
Got top 2.
Cap villains, one and done. What do you got here?
All right, I'm gonna go with.
It's gonna be a good one.
Clinton McIntyre, otherwise known as Protocide.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the first time we see Protocide is in Captain America Volume 3, number 28. a cover date of April 2000. So
Hmm.
that means he was created by Dan Jurgens and Andy Kubert. So, we got to go back a couple issues. We got to go back to actually issue 26 to see where Protoside's story begins. And it starts with 3 SHIELD agents basically assigned to inventory a SHIELD warehouse that they've been storing stuff in all the way back to World War I. So lots and lots of things unlabeled. Somebody lost inventory. They got to go there and inventory. So they're looking around, they're finding things, writing it down, and they come across this big, well, let's just say a man-sized crate. And one of the agents turns around and immediately kills the other 2.
What?
Yeah, and his name is Billups. And we see in the next couple issues that he like wheels that crate out of there. And it turns out he's actually an operative of Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM.
AIM.
Yeah, he's an AIM operative. And he takes this crate to the AIM headquarters and he turns it over to the AIM director. And so in issue 28, we see what it is they found in the crate. And that's the first time we see this character named Protoside. And so over the next few issues, we learn a little bit more about Protoside, although we don't see his full origin story until Captain America Annual 2000, which I think came out with a cover date of November 2000. And so what really happened is this was a guy who was sort of waiting in the wings with Steve Rogers to see if he would be the first candidate for the super soldier serum. And so we see in his origin story that Dr. Erskine's there, and we see Chester Phillips there, the general in charge of Project Rebirth, and we see another general by the name of General Saunders. And General Saunders isn't happy that Chester Phillips and Erskine want to use the 4F weakling, Steve Rogers, to be the first recipient of the super soldier serum. He's got his eyes on another guy, a Private Clinton McIntyre, who unfortunately happens to be in the lockup and sentenced to death because he fragged his CO on the battlefield over in France. He's a mean guy.
Doesn't sound like a nice guy.
Yeah, burly guy, mean guy, but he's a great physical specimen. So Saunders thinks this is the guy we should be enhancing even more to be our top soldier. And so he steals a vial of the super soldier serum and he gives it to Clinton McIntyre. And he says, if you drink this and you take the enhancement, then I will make sure you get a full pardon and you will be the American hero. And so Clinton McIntyre chugs it, right? And then he starts like going through his like, oh my God, it hurts, sort of thing. And then he keels over dead, has a heart attack. And then, Phillips and Erskine find out and they're like, oh, that was only the first part of the serum. There's 3 components to the serum, as we know through all the retcons now, right? So you only gave him the first part, so it killed him. And so they put him on ice someplace and stick him in this warehouse. And that's where Billups had found him and brought him over to AIM headquarters. And guess what? They were able to reanimate him. Same reason Cap, was stuck in the ice for all those years. They were able to, he was able to come back. They were able to bring back Clinton McIntyre. And they name him Protoside as a sort of shorthand for prototype. But here's the thing. He was never the first candidate, but they told him he was. The AIM guys basically fed him a diet of disinformation and said, yeah, you were the first Captain America. You were the one who were enhanced and you were sent over to fight the Nazis in Europe. And Steve Rogers was the second guy, right? And then he went over and killed you. And that's how you ended up in the crate.
That's, those AIM guys.
So he's super mad at Steve
Underhanded.
Rogers, right? That Steve Rogers not only killed him, but basically stole his glory as the American hero. And so they send him out to like find Cap, right? The first guy he runs into, it's like his first test they send him out, is against US Agent. And he gives like a beatdown on US Agent. I mean, Johnny Walker didn't have a chance against this guy. And we know how strong Johnny Walker is, even relative to Steve Rogers. And like Protoside has no problem putting down US Agent. So as the story progresses, and it carries through for several more issues, we finally see the showdown between Cap and Protoside, because AIM has Protoside going out and destroying Hydra bases. Yeah, they're trying to take Hydra off the map. So Cap runs into him in the process of Protoside trying to like destroy a Hydra base. And they both get attacked by the Hydra agents. And so they have to work together to survive this. and there's this big energy core. And in the process of what's going on, old Clinton McIntyre, Protocide, falls into the energy core and he's hanging on by his fingertips. And Steve reaches down to help him out. And of course, you know, he can't help himself. He's got to give a speech. He's got to give a speech about,
of course, he can't. Yes,
yeah,
Steve
right?
couldn't help
Yeah,
himself.
right. You've been given this great capability, these enhancements, you know, use them for the right reason, use them for good, use them to make the world a better place. And he helps him out. And what does Protocide do? Knock Steve into the energy core.
Yeah.
Right. And then he takes off, right? And he goes back to AIM headquarters and he tells him that, yeah, I knocked him in the energy core. And then they're trying to like fill his head with more lies, but he's starting to suspect now. He's like, why did this guy like try to save me? And he can't get Steve's speech out of his head. So, you know, that's going on. And guess what? Steve didn't die in the energy core. He's saved by his shield. That great shield. He like landed on his shield and all that energy is like going against the shield. So he manages to get out and he goes to find the AIM building, the headquarters where Protocide is. And they end up fighting again. And this time it's Steve who finds himself in a predicament and Protocide saves him. But at the same time, Protocide flips into where this big explosion occurs. And we think that is the end of Protocide, that he sacrificed his life to save Steve Rogers. But at the end of that book, we see a guy from the back anyway, we assume is Clinton McIntyre because he's got Protocide shield and he's asking for a ride from a truck driver. And he says, I just want to go anywhere far away from here. So he's still alive. But we haven't seen him since.
I don't get that. I don't understand why we haven't seen him since. He seems like such a compelling character, an interesting character. And by the way, thank you, Andrew Rodriguez, on the Facebook group for suggesting Protocide. You were the first one to suggest putting Protocide here on the list. Listen, J. Michael Straczynski, if you're listening, I'm sure you got a year's worth of plots figured out. You need to get Protocide into the story, bring him back. He's an interesting character. And you know, it brings again, a lot of these guys are retcon guys, right? A lot of these are, you know, this character's been around a long time. Seems to be a favorite of a lot of writers to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it gives you an opportunity to, I mean, if you introduce somebody new, you've only got, you know, a short time to work with, but if you have this retcon history, you can create all kinds of backstory, right? But here's one of the things I really like about Protocide. You know, as I said earlier, I love this idea of different versions of the super soldier serum, you know, this all weapon plus for that matter. And, you know, there's lots of folks. Horace Littleton, Dr. Mindbubble was part of the weapons minus program, guys who were supposed to be creating ways to deal with people who were weapons plus. But I like Protocide because he comes from the same era. So all the things that we know about Steve wrestling with this being a man out of time, you know, just like the linguistic artifacts, the sayings he uses, his pop culture references, his preferences for films and music. Clinton McIntyre comes from that same time frame. So there's a lot there to work with. One of the best quotes I think from Protocide in this story is he says, I'm the man you destroyed 60 years ago, pal. Here's where I square the deal with interest. Nice. And that quote right there, Steve says, hey, that lingo is old lingo. That's lingo from like my period.
Square the deal with interest. Yeah.
So he knows that like this guy comes from that era just based on the language. So that right there is a kernel of like the possibilities of two guys from the same world, both men out of time. I mean, that'd be great to work with.
Totally. Yeah. We need to bring him back. We need to bring him back. Everybody listening to that?
Yeah. Well, here's a fun fact, Rick.
Yeah.
Protocide is actually in real world an oral antibiotic with the generic name tinidazole, and it's used to fight bacteria in the body, including infections in the intestines and vagina.
You don't say.
Yeah.
Well, I think JMS should totally make sure he brings that up, so that, you know, maybe when it comes up, like Protocide's on the loose, and then the Avengers monitor comes up, and you know, someone's on there and they're like, wait a minute, this antibiotic is on the loose.
Can you imagine? Picture the scene. Ready? They're in Avengers Mansion, right?
Yeah.
And somebody says, "Where the hell is Protocide?" Right? And then Alexa's in the corner, and Alexa's like, "Protocide is in Black Widow."
Oh God. Because she has an intestine infection.
Right, intestinal infection. Right, she
Yes,
travels
yeah.
a lot. Yeah,
Yeah. She might have had a Turkish delight.
yeah.
All right. So number 2, Bob, let's get that. First of all, that was a great number 2 for our
I
top
say
10
that every
list.
day.
Well, then let's get to the number 2 on the greatest one-hit wonders. You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Okay. Sometimes I feel like I've got to run away. I've got to get away from the pain you drive into the heart of me. The love we share seems to go nowhere, and I've lost my life. For I toss and turn, I can't sleep at night. Once I ran to you. Now I run from you.
Oh no.
This tainted love you've given, I give you all a boy could give you. Take my tears, and that's not nearly
Oh
all.
no.
Tainted love.
It's right on the tip of my tongue. I can see the video.
It's
But
Tainted Love.
is that the name of the band?
No, the name of the
I
band
know
is
that. I know
Soft
those.
Cell.
Yeah, Soft Cell. I know the song, but I
Yeah,
can't. I couldn't remember the
1981.
band. Soft Cell. Yeah.
1981. Yeah.
Great song. Tainted Love.
Yeah.
This is why I listen to Bob FM on the radio. I told you
Yeah.
my preference for 102.9 Bob FM. They
All
play
right.
all this music.
All right. I'm gonna admit something. Back in 1981, I misheard the lyrics.
Okay.
I could have sworn instead of take my tears and that's not nearly all, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't. I didn't hear the word tears. I heard something else. It started with a T.
Yeah.
And I used to be like, what?
What?
They can't be saying that on the
It
radio.
happens. Earlier when you said catatonic,
Yeah.
I thought you said canatonic. So I was like, what the hell does it have to do with a canatonic? Oh, catatonic. Yes.
Well, sounds like you got a drinking problem.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to number 1 on the top 10 Captain America one and done villains. You ready for this one?
Yes.
I really thought this was a no-brainer. This to me makes the most sense. This character had a very short lifespan, but has appeared in so many different stories over the years. This character is a one and done, and yet was in the MCU. Right? Like how many one and done villains can you say made it into the movies?
Okay.
This is a one and done villain. Yet they appeared in Tales of Suspense 63, Captain America 109, Captain America 255, The Adventures of Captain America #1, Avengers The Initiative Annual #1, Captain America Comics 70th Anniversary, Captain America Reborn #2, The Marvels Project #4, Captain America in the 1940s comic newspaper strip. And you're like, that can't be. How can this character have appeared in all of this and qualify as a one and done? I'm going to tell you why. It's none other than Heinz Kruger.
Oh, the ketchup king.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heinz Kruger appeared at Captain America Comics #1, which came out in March of 1941 by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Who's Heinz Kruger? Come on, everybody. You know who he is. He's the spy, the Nazi German spy who came in and he shot Dr. Erskine. Right? He's got to be #1.
Yeah.
Because he is the person who is the reason Steve Rogers is the only super soldier.
That is true. Yes.
Right. So Heinz Kruger was a spy, right? And he was sent by Hitler to infiltrate U.S. Army's Project Rebirth to stop Erskine from successfully deploying his super soldier serum and allowing the United States to produce an army of super soldiers. So he somehow infiltrates in there. He has a secret identity, right? He makes his way in, and then after Steve Rogers has been successfully enhanced with the serum, with the Vita rays, right? Kruger broke the observation cabin's glass, and he shoots Dr. Erskine. Now, Rogers, who, he just became, enhanced. He's not used to his own strength yet. He tries to capture Kruger, and he throws him into the Vita ray device, which, well, it caused Kruger's death, right? He was electrocuted. So technically, he's a one and done, right?
He is.
But yet he's so important, Bob, that he has appeared in all those issues that I mentioned.
Yeah.
To me, that makes him the logical number one and done villain.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I bet there's even more issues that he probably appeared in. And I know that, like, in one of my favorite all-time series, the 8-issue The Marvels Project. He had quite a bit about him. We learn a lot more about Heinz Kruger, but still, that's it. That's all. His story ends in the Project Rebirth, lab. So I think it's a great choice. Great choice, Rick.
Absolutely. All right. We'll finish this with the VH1 #1 ranked one-hit wonder. This one's also got a little Spanish in it, Bob, that it's gonna be a little tough for me to do this one, but I'm gonna do my best. I am not trying to seduce you. When I dance, they call me blank. And the boys, they say, que soy buena. They all want me. They can't have me. So they all come and dance beside me. Move with me. Chant with me. And if you're good, I'll take you home with me.
I don't have any idea about that one. Nobody's ever said that to me.
All right.
Hard for me to get my wife to say that to me. So
get in line. It's Macarena.
Is it really?
Yes.
All right.
Dun da da dun da da dun da 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 dun da da dun da da dun da 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 dun da da dun da da dun da 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 da.
Hey, Macarena.
Apparently, that is the #1 one-hit wonder of all time.
That makes sense. It was a worldwide hit.
It was.
And it's still played at every single wedding.
I know, except mine. It was not played at mine. There was a list of songs not to play at my wedding that I gave to the DJ.
Yeah, Electric Slide?
I think that was not on there. There are a few others. Yeah. Celebrate.
Oh.
Have a good time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right. Bob, this has been an extra long episode, so maybe we could just do real quickly. Who do we think dishonorable mentions are?
I certainly have one. I love the Green Skull.
The Green Skull.
I love the Green Skull because we see him only in the first, 2 pages of Captain America Volume 7, #1. He looks like the Red Skull, but he's got a green skull, and he's like an eco-terrorist. So he flies around in an aircraft that's powered by compost, and he has this sort of bioweapon that turns people into vegetative matter. And that's his plan. He's going to return Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, back to the plants, right? So he's got a great quote, Rick. I love this quote. "You're far too late, Prince Protector of Pollution." And he's referring, of course, to Cap, right?
Yeah.
So the inconvenient truth is you're going to die. Come on, that's gold.
It is. That was good stuff.
He's still alive because Cap captures him and turns him over to the police. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, we did cover that in episode 122, Castaway in Dimension Z #1. That was kicking off Volume 7. So before Cap actually got sucked away into Dimension Z, he did battle the Green Skull. All right. That's a good honorable mention or dishonorable mention. I'm going to go with Phoenix. Now, Brad Gause, Gause, Brad Gause, he suggested Phoenix in in the Facebook group, and there were a few others who agree with them and saying, "Oh, 100% Phoenix. We got to do Phoenix." And I'm going to go with no. Yes, Helmut Zemo was Phoenix.
Yeah.
He did come back as Baron Zemo, the next iteration of Baron Zemo, and who is quite honestly, he's the number 2 villain in my opinion, and I think yours, of Captain America.
He's
so
a great villain.
To have him number 2 in number 1 really in our top 10 list, not named Red Skull, and then put him in this one just didn't seem right. He only had the one issue as Phoenix, but he came back as Baron Zemo. So Helmut Zemo does not make our list, but it is Phoenix is a dishonorable mention.
Yeah, he definitely deserves to be mentioned, and that was a great episode too. We covered that one. I love that. I think it was the only time. It was issue 168, but it was the Power Records adaptation of it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so that was a lot of fun to cover that. I think it was episode 29. And so
look at you remembering episode numbers.
Rick, you know me, it's like I have a mind like a steel trap. That's slightly rusty. Need some WD-40 from time to time, but
it does squeak a lot.
But that was a fun episode to do with you. So definitely check that one out if you haven't.
It is cool because we do take excerpts from the record and play it interdispersed throughout. It was a lot of fun. Episode 29.
Right.
All right, Bob. We promised that we would get to who our guest is going to be next episode. Yes. I am very excited. Oh, and by the way, everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this top 10 list. If there was anybody that we left out that you're like, that's crazy. There's no way in the world that Adonis should have made this top 10 list. We should have had blank on here.
Schmedlap should have been here.
Yeah, exactly. Then fine. Let us know. Put it in the Facebook comments when we post this episode. Would love to hear your feedback on that. All right. Next episode. This person is a former guest on the show. She had been on episode 86, which came out about 13, well, I guess when this comes out, maybe 14 months ago. And so it's high time to come back, but the timing couldn't be any better. Alana Smith, who is the editor of the Captain America line of comics. She oversees all of the Captain America and Captain America related books. She was the one that, we had on prior to Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly taking off the new volume series, and prior to having Tochi Oyobuchi on, for the new Sam Wilson series. So she came on back in episode 86 to kind of talk about that. Now we're going to have her back to talk about the ending of those two series. Why did they end? What was the thought process behind that? And to talk about the new upcoming Captain America series with the aforementioned J. Michael Straczynski. So that's going to be a great conversation, Bob.
I look forward to that. There's a lot of questions I know that people have, and we got to dig to the bottom of this and maybe get some like gems of what's coming down the pike. Because I think there's a lot of unease, right, with the ending of the last and the beginning of the next, and I think people want to know what they can expect.
Absolutely. And whatever nuggets we can get from her, and quite frankly, I want the dirt and why the old stuff didn't last around, because I know everybody was super excited about it. So maybe we can get a little information on that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, Bob. As always, I had a ton of fun wrapping cap with you.
I did too. I cannot wait, Rick, to do this again.
Absolutely. All right. Well, he's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you have been listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.